2 million years ago, on a grassland that would one day be called East Africa, a boy fell from a rock. He was maybe 14 by our counting, though no one counted years back then. He had a name only his mother knew how to say, and a smooth dark river pebble tied around his neck on a strip of sinew, because once he had pulled it out of the mud and decided it was his. He fell because a stone slipped. That is all. Not a hunt, not a battle, not a beast. A stone. In the world we have built, a fall like that ends in a hospital. There is morphine. There is an X-ray. There is metal driven into bone and a clean white cast and a return to ordinary life. 2 million years ago, none of that existed. There was no word for fracture. There was barely a word for anything. There was only the body, and the ground, and the people who happened to be walking with you. The bone in his lower leg snapped on impact. It is one of the strongest bones the human body grows, and it is built to take a beating. To break it takes force. The kind of force a fall down a slope of loose rock delivers in a single second. He hit. The bone gave. And before the dust had finished settling, his life had quietly split into two halves. The half he was born into, and the half he would now have to learn how to live. If you have ever broken a bone, you know that pain is not a single feeling. It is a wave. The first wave is shock. The brain hides what it can't yet handle. There is a strange quiet, a high ringing, a feeling that the world has paused. Then the second wave comes. The body realizes what has happened. And the pain is no longer information. It is the only thing. For a modern person, that wave is held by drugs. For this boy, it was held by nothing. He had no aspirin. He had no understanding of inflammation. He had no idea why his leg felt as if it were burning from the inside out. He only knew that something inside him had gone wrong in a way that was bigger than him, and that he could not get up. His clan came running. 6 of them. His mother, an aunt, 2 men who were probably his father and uncle, and 2 younger children who saw him on the ground and froze. There were no doctors among them. There were no words like fracture, infection, fever, or shock. There were only hands. Hands that had skinned animals. Hands that had built fires. Hands that had buried other members of the clan who did not survive their bad luck. And those hands now had to decide what to do with him. The first decision was the simplest and the hardest. They could not leave him. Not yet. So they made a litter. 2 long branches, plant fibers twisted into cord, strips of hide stretched between. They lifted him onto it, and his scream was the loudest sound any of them had made in days. They carried him slowly back to camp. Every step jolted his leg. He fainted twice on the way. Each time he woke, his mother's hand was on his face. That night, in the firelight, 2 men did something the human species had been doing for tens of thousands of years already, long before they knew why it worked. They straightened his leg. They braced it with 3 peeled sticks. They wrapped it in soft inner bark and packed it with crushed green leaves. It was a splint. It had no name. It was not taught in a school. It came from watching, from remembering, from generations of trial and very expensive error. And it was, at that moment, the most advanced medical technology on Earth. The setting of the bone was, by any measure we have, an act of brutality. There was no anesthesia. There was no calm voice counting down. He was awake. He felt every fraction of every second. The men braced him. The women held him. He screamed until there was no sound left in him, and then he kept screaming silently. And when it was done, his leg was straight again, and the worst was, somehow, only beginning. Because the real killer, 2 million years ago, was not the break. It was the days that came after. Fever rose on the second night. His skin burned. His breath shortened. The body, alone with no help, was now fighting a war on 3 fronts. The bone trying to knit, the soft tissue swelling, and the bacteria that always come, always, the moment the skin is broken. There were no antibiotics. There was a woman with calloused hands and a knowledge of bitter roots, who crushed bark and leaves into a paste and fed him a brew that tasted like dirt and that may, by sheer biological luck, have done something. Or may not have. For 3 days, his life balanced on a knife. The clan watched him. They could not hunt for long, because they would not leave him. They grew thinner. The infant cried. The older children sat in silence. And the men looked at each other across the fire with a question they could not say out loud. The question every nomadic group in human history has had to face at least once. What do you do with someone who cannot walk? His mother answered that question with her body. She stood between the men and her son and made it impossible to ask again. So they waited. The fever broke just before dawn on the fourth day, and a flicker of color came back into his face, and a hand that had been limp for hours softly closed around hers. He survived. Most did not. Across the long arc of human prehistory, a broken bone was very often a death sentence. Not because the bone could not heal, but because everything around the bone could kill you. Infection, hunger, predators in the night, the slow erosion of being too slow for a fast world. We know this because archaeologists find their skeletons. Many show fractures that healed badly, crookedly, painfully. Many more were never found at all, because they were eaten before they could become bone. Those who did survive carried the proof in every step. He would walk again, but not the way he had walked before. The leg healed shorter, the foot turned in slightly, the muscle never came back fully. He limped for the rest of his life. He could no longer run with the men. He could no longer climb. But he could still see, still tell, still teach the younger ones which slope of the escarpment was loose, which was firm, which one had taken a piece of him forever. And here is the part that matters most, the part the bones can almost tell us themselves. The fact that he survived at all means his clan carried him, fed him, defended him, waited for him. In a world without a single law, without a single book, without a single word for kindness, they chose, day after day, not to leave him behind. That choice is the oldest medicine on earth. Older than splints. Older than fire. Older than language. It is the moment when our ancestors stopped being only animals and started being something else. Something that looks at a body on the ground and decides that a body on the ground is still one of us. 2 million years later, in rooms of metal and light, we drive screws into bone and call it surgery. We give numbers to pain and color to scans. We are very proud of what we know. We should be. But somewhere underneath all of it, very quietly, the same thing is happening that happened that night by the fire. Hands holding a body. Voices keeping watch. A refusal, against everything, to walk on without the fallen. He lived. He limped. He grew old, by the standards of his time, which means he saw maybe 30 more summers. And when at last his bones lay down in the dust forever, the small dark river pebble was still tied around his neck. Because a boy had once pulled it out of the mud, and decided it was his, and life had broken him, and his people had held him while he healed, and he had carried that pebble through every uneven step of every uneven day until the very end. That is what it cost, 2 million years ago, to survive a broken bone. And that is what it bought. A life that limped, yes, but a life that walked. A life that was held. A life that mattered, because the people who walked beside him decided, with no words and no rule and no reward, that it would.